All right, so um, please let me know if everything is working, if my audio, my camera, and also A Studio shirt. I think it's the best shirt I have here. All right, so let's talk about removing decision overhead. So I think everyone does decision every day, and it's particularly something that we do, and we tend to spend too much time on some very trivial decisions, like this example. Watch TV? No, I'd rather doom scroll Netflix until the end of time. I think everyone goes through this every week when trying to watch something with your girlfriend or with your friends, and you spend too much time just dumb scrolling. I think it's more even better just scrolling on it. But it turns out it's not agency increasing this thing. It's not good. You're just wasting time, like hours just scrolling on this. And why did we do that? It's just too many options, too many choices. And how we do that on our field on software development, that happens as well. There's too many frameworks, too many libraries, too many databases, cloud systems, patterns, design patterns. There's too many CSS libraries, modules. There's too many things to consider when building software. And we as developers, we're very fancy and we tend to just try to test everything we have and everything that the market provides. And while we're talking, it probably has been being developed another framework for JavaScript. So it's an industry that basically creates a new framework, a new library, and a new technology every day, and we like to test it out. But what the paradox of choice says is, the bigger the amount of choices that we have, it actually doesn't increase our freedom. It actually diminishes because we tend to feel paralyzed over so many choices, so many options. We have to consider a lot of things, and there's little time. Time is limited, so we cannot check in every option, every choice. It turns out we get paralyzed and we don't know actually what to do. But let's say you have made a choice. We have to do a choice. So let's say you choose React. Let's go with React. But then there's this state of imagined alternative, because while you're developing, you know that some points on your business logic and the way your app structure works, it would have been better if you had choose another thing. It would have been better if you had choose Rails, maybe. There's a lot of options and you don't know. You might be going better with another stuff. We do that because there is opportunity cost. And it is important that we wade in and we understand that by choosing one thing, we are losing the opportunity to the gains that we could have been with other choices. So I choose React, but I could have choose maybe Rails and it would have been better. I would have been more productive. But it turns out you cannot make that, you shouldn't make that you paralyzed. It shouldn't make you paralyzed. You have made already a choice and it is what it is. So take ownership over it and trust in yourself, because you have made a thought process, and you certainly have made a good choice. It's not the perfect one, but the perfect, it's not possible. It's not possible to deliver something perfect, but it's possible to deliver a product that works and that it's not cheat code, as Melanie said earlier today. That is our focus. We have to realize that this is about a product and not about our interests as developers. Why that happens? Why do we struggle so much with very simple stuff? I think Bruno has said a little bit about this, about bike chatting. And basically what happens is you submit a pull request with like 10 lines of code and you get 500 comments from the team members, and you submit another pull request with 500 lines of code and it gets approved in 10 seconds. And why that happens? That happens because the simple the things are, the more trivial the things are, we tend to spend more time on it because it's easier for us to understand it and come with other possible solutions for it. And that is why we take so much time on trying to decide, let's say, what ice cream we would eat in a market. It's a simple situation, but it happens, and it also happens when you're developing, when you're working with React, for example. You're always considering if you should break your component to a smaller one, and then when you have another very small component, you think, well, I might turn it even smaller and maybe reuse it, or maybe I should start using some reducer or sharing all the state with a context API. There's a lot of things that we start considering, but in fact, what we're building is just a hello world. That is actually a GitHub repository where the guy just shows a hello world with all the gang of four, with all the design patterns, and it just will make everything overly complex, just a hello world on the most fancy way that you could have achieved. And that is basically what we do a lot of time. We just make something that could have been very simple and we make very complex. This is because we tend to make things complex because we are fancy. But there is one thing to consider. There is essential complexity. There is complexity that it is inherent to the software. You cannot change this. It is what it is. So for example, you have Uber as an example. It is definitely a very complex software. It's not simple. It's not simple to build a Uber or a Facebook. But what happens is we're not investing too much time on trying to build another Uber. We are investing too much time on trying to build a new hello world or a simple counter or a CRUD, a to-doist. That's the problem. There's too much complexity. We are adding this complexity. And it's important that we know that we notice that, and we take ownership over it. Because in that way, we can make better decisions, understand the outcomes of our decisions. That happens as well, the accidental complexity. That happens a lot because we have this very known concept called decision fatigue. Decision fatigue, it's important first that we address 3 points. First, there is decisions have cost. I think this is, everyone knows decisions have cost, and it's a tautology, so it's axiomatic. Decisions have cost. And even making decisions have cost. The time you spend making decisions have cost. So you have to assure that you are taking the inappropriate time and while doing decisions. You're not spending too much time doing trivial stuff like, where should I put my CSS files? Should I name it index.css or maybe main.css or maybe something like that? I remember that me as starting in the field, I always was concerned with this very simple stuff like naming files, file structure, and all this stuff. And it really took me like hours to just figure out what was the best pattern and the pattern that the industry was using. I was really concerned with these things. And there's limited number of decisions. You cannot possibly decide everything on your day. You cannot decide. Have you guys ever wondered why very successful guys just don't care about their clothing? They just use the same clothes every day. And that is due to the fact that they are reducing the decisions that they do every day so that they can focus on the things that really matter to what they want to do on their days. And coming back to what we were talking before, if we spend too much time deciding very simple stuff like breaking components into smaller ones, we would definitely lose energy, and we will be focusing on things that are trivial rather than focusing on the things like, let's say you spend a day just working on CSS, and then at the end of the day, you took so much decisions, too much time on trivial stuff that at the end of the day, when you have to build a Stripe integration or something more complex, you will just be on autopilot. And that's a huge issue. If you're on autopilot, what happens is you're just doing what your gut is saying. Neither your gut, you're just deciding what is in front of you. You don't have energy to analyze stuff. You don't have energy to think through things. So you just decide whatever sounds good for you in the moment. Maybe your wife suggests you to buy pizza. That's a good one. Let's eat some pizza. I think that's something that happens to me a lot. when I start hitting the gym and trying to have a very good fitness life. And then if I spend too much time worrying through my day, when I have a very exhaustive day of work, let's say, uh, when I go to when I get out of my cave, I just don't worry. I don't want to decide anything. I just get what is in front of me. I just eat some frozen food, and I don't care about it. And then I realize, oh, I should have done a better decision. And that is because we are on autopilot, and we forgot that we could have been making a better decision. Now, it's very easy to say that that we have all these problems, these issues, and I have had this myself, but it has changed on the last days, in the last times, and it's very important because if you have a framework, you have ownership over this. It makes easier for you to work on your to work and make decisions. Life is made of that. It's made of making decisions, and we cannot avoid it. But we have to understand that worrying is optional, and that has changed me a lot, the way that I have been working. And there is this Veri framework made by someone, I don't remember the name, but it's pretty cool. It really works. I think that's the most important things, the content. And it tells us is to split it into two buckets, one being terminal values and another being instrumental values. Terminal values are the what we wanted to achieve, and we, on the context that we're discussing here, product focused development, when we want to deliver a product, a high quality product that attends the client expectations and their users expectations, giving people agency. And how we do that is the instrumental values. Instrumental values, it's good to consider company values as well. It's also not only the tasks that you are assigned to. Of course, you can think in this way when you're delivering very fine, granular tasks, very small tasks. You can do that, but it's very important as well to consider core values of your company. Here at AE, communication, over communication is very important, and that is something that helps us a lot to deliver more, because it is an instrument. It is a way to achieve stuffs. There's also automation or delegation. This is something very important for me as well. First, let's talk about automation. So there's a lot of tools here out there, and as we are so fancy, we can Google for these technologies and start using them. Let's say about Linter or Prettier. It really decreases you. It really take you to a state where you don't have to decide how to organize your code. You have already a default way. You have already decided with your team what's the best way, and it just does it. You don't have to think, well, should I add another line break here, or maybe this function is too big, it's hard to read. No, there's Prettier, there's Linter, there is a lot of tools that is already automated for you. Another way of thinking it is already not only for software development, but also to life itself. Automation is also habits, as we were discussing before. Having the habit of over communication is certainly something that will help you at doing decisions, because you have all the context necessary to do things. And there's also delegation. Delegation, you can just make someone do something for you. But I have learned myself that delegation is also, I have, like, I'm just in a decision fatigue, I don't know what to do, I'm taking just too much time to do something. I realize that I'm taking too much time to decide something because I don't have enough energy anymore. So I just go off to Felipe Taboada or Guilherme Pacheco, some big guys, and just ask them for a little help. And it turns out they don't do the work that I needed. What they do is they make the decision for me, And that's cool because now I delegated the task of making the decision. Right now, I just have to do what the developers are good in doing, which is coding. Um, so if the values framework and the automation delegation fails and you have to do this decision, maybe you're the only developer in the project, maybe you don't have access to someone else, or maybe the context is hard to explain for someone else and it's better that you make the decision, then you can weigh in pros and cons. You can come up with a huge list of pros and cons and trying to look at for the technology, seeing how they work, how they can fit it and not fit in your project. So you go to rational decision making. But there is something that is very important for me as well, is that you mix intuition and rational decision making. It's very important that you mix these two things because sometimes your intuition is capable of making you, showing you the right path. Just a gut feeling is enough for you to give you the right path, and you just use the rational decision making to have the confirmation that that thing really works for your situation. And the other is also something that works. Sometimes you have a rational decision making that seems to be work, but your gut says maybe that's not the best idea. It's good to take these things in consideration because working them together, it really gives you ownership. It really gives you the power of deciding and using what you have and not worrying too much. And now let's talk a little bit about the idea of framework. So frameworks, they are very important, not only frameworks, but also any library and modules, anything that is automated for us. But frameworks itself, they give you a path. They give you a path and you don't have to make all those decisions that you would have to do if you have if you don't have a framework, you don't have a path. Of course, there are unopinionated frameworks that they don't give you strong opinions. You can do whatever you want, but they give you a path. There's a way to do some sort of some foundation. So it's important. The things that I found that works more in frameworks is those that keep things simple and stupid. It's very important that we have things that are simple because it's harder to add accidental complexity. If you have frameworks that are just too overly complex, they just try too much to make things fancy, it certainly will add accidental complexity and it will be hard for you to understand what you're doing. It's easier to manage frameworks that gives every tools in front of you and you can see how things works. There's no gigantic abstraction layer. Also, clean code. I think Bruno has said a lot about this as well on the TypeScript presentation. Is something very important as well. And this keep simple and stupid in clean code is very important as well for pull request review. Because, guys, as I said, if you submit a pull request with too nebulous code, people will not understand. It will be harder to review and to give inputs on it. But if you write something simple and clean, you will certainly get a better feedback. You will certainly get a better pull review. And there is also horizontal code. It's something that I have experimenting a lot on the last times, and it's very cool. You have a less coupled environment. It's good because it removes all the decisions that you have to do when you have a code that is more tree related and everything is coupled. And if you change something, it can potentially break the rest of the app. And that is something that has increased my productivity a lot. And that is something that I get from Nullstack. We had this conversation earlier, and Nullstack is very good at removing decisions overhead. I really want you guys, and I really tell you guys we're hiring, and I hope you guys liked it. And if you have any questions, please submit it.